Hi, I am Bruce Burnham. I am the chairman of the 2013 edition of the Maine Photography Show, and we're here to talk about the show a little bit and our good friend, the late Jim Taliana. Jim is the originator of the Maine Photography Show.
And my name is Peggy Powis. You will hear my voice because Jim Taliana recruited me to document the Maine Photography Show. He was always trying to figure out ways to promote the arts. From the Boothbay Region Art Foundation archives, here are moments with Jim from that first documentary.
We started working on the show 14 months ago. I had brought it up to the board of directors at the Boothbay Region Art Foundation a number of times. And last year it stuck. Yeah, they liked the idea and said I can proceed.
With Jim's guidance and the original chairman, the Maine Photography Show was launched. First 3 years we were in the Boothbay Opera House, 2 years at the Boothbay Railway Museum. We moved the Maine Photography Show to this building, and again, Jim was a lot of credit for that.
For a first-time event, the list of must-dos is very long.
You needed to have a judge, and you need a judge that demands respect as soon as you hear of them.
The Maine Photography Show was honored to have as its judge and juror Anne Havenga, the Estrelita and Yusuf Karsh Curator of Photographs for the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. She worked her way through over 400 images entered by 161 photographers to finally select the 77 photographers and 77 photographs exhibited in the show.
The thing with Jim is he was an extremely good artist from any kind of medium, and that was his forte. He had an advertising background. When he came to Boothbay, he immediately sought out a venue to show his work, and he became ignited with the philosophy of the Boothbay Region Art Foundation and how we represent all mediums of art, from photography to sculpture, the whole gauntlet.
Almost everyone within earshot of Boothbay Harbor will have a Jim Taliana story. You are about to hear some of them from the people he touched, mentored, taught, and inspired.
And worked very closely with Julia every year on preparing our annual town report.
Jim came to us and said he would give us 1 year putting together the cover, and 11 years later, he kept coming back and putting it together, and he never asked of any, for any monetary compensation or anything. He stayed with us beyond just doing the artwork. He put together, the collages, the pictures, wanted to position, everything from the beginning to the end of the book, making sure the numbering, the title pages were done correctly. A lot of times he would take trips to go see his family in Michigan, and we got a little nervous if he didn't come back in time, but he always came back to make sure and proofed everything. I had been here a few years prior doing it by myself when he wasn't here, so it was nice to have somebody to work with me that had been a professional capacity putting together a book. He actually taught me quite a bit, which I'm glad that now I know how to put together a book from the beginning to the end, and taught me a lot about photography, which I will hold near and dear to my heart. Well, he'd always go up to spend time with Barbara Rumsey and get old photographs and lay out the table of contents for us. He would lay out pictures. We spent some time just laying out pictures and showing me how to take a picture and see what was best, where I should be putting the people in it, positioning them, and how to get the best, capture the best experience from looking through a photographer's eyes. We submitted to Maine Municipal Association for the first one he ever produced, and won the Excellence Award for a town report cover for his pen and ink for 2001. The best part about putting together the books is Jim always loved to capture people, live people in the books that no one knew were part of the books. But we didn't know until he unveiled the picture. The town manager's in a couple of them. A lot of times his wife, Gloria, is in the book. He loved putting people in amongst his artwork and making the pictures come alive, which was really neat. He loved the town. He loved bringing the town to, fruition within his artwork. One year he was doing one of these covers and had a lighthouse out front. We're at the same exact time. Well, he was stressed out that year. So I think we decided to go with pictures for the volunteers.
This is my favorite.
There's no electric wires. It's the old town. It could be the way it was. And occasionally, on Windjammer days, if you walk downtown at just the right time of night, Jim captured the sails showing above the buildings. It's beautiful.
Do you see what else he did in this picture?
Tell me.
He put the Art Foundation right in the center.
Oh, we know that. Yeah.
Well, that's what Jim was all about. It's great, though, isn't it?
Jim every year would tell me about how he did feel like this was his home. And every year he would tell me that I may not be able to do the cover next year because I'm getting involved in more things, illustrating books. And he would tell me, for Sarah Sherman, and the year he was doing soccer, and he was getting more involved with the church and with the Art Foundation. And next year I might not be able to come back. But he would always call us back up and say, when do we start meeting again for the town report? We never had to call him. He was always anxiously awaiting to come back in. So I think he enjoyed this project. Yes.
My name is Sarah Sherman, and I am the owner of Cozy Harbor Press, which is located on Southport Island. I first met Jim Taliana while looking for someone to give my oldest son, Sherman, art lessons. When Sherm started taking art lessons with Jim, it was everything from drawing and painting to mobiles and sculpture, and this is my favorite sculpture. It's clay and then painted, and Jim had a friend with a kiln and they had it fired. But this is what Jim was bringing out of Sherm when he was like 8 years old, and I think it's pretty impressive. And that's really how our relationship formed. From that, it turned into a collaborative relationship. We did a children's book, The Littlest Tugboat, and then I did 2 journals, and Jim did all the artwork for them and the covers. The best thing about working with Jim Taliana is he always was thinking outside the box. There was no problem that we would come across in the course of the graphic design of the book that he couldn't think of a way around or a creative idea to make the book better. Jim and I worked very closely on this because it was very important to me that the illustrations were accurate, and in doing so we also brought Marge and Elliot Winslow into the mix, whose tugboats these are based on. Once Jim had the initial drawings done, we took them to the Winslows, but it was that important to us that the book be accurate. So the first journal we did together was Harbor Journal Volume 1, done in celebration of the 10th anniversary of my publishing business, Cozy Harbor Press. It was a collection of my writing and other main writers and artists' work. And this book, well, it sold out as soon as it came out. Jim did a number of drawings of the Bounty for me because I didn't want it to just be writing. I wanted it to be artwork as well. And Jim did these pen and ink drawings, which really, well, long story short, we won the Best Self-Published Book with the Maine Writers Association. Really, I chalk that up to Jim because it really is a piece of art. It's not just a book. This is the second collaboration Jim and I did in regard to putting together a journal. And this was very important to me that the artwork be precise, again, because it was my aunt and uncle's store. And it means a lot to my family. And Jim not only did the cover work, but did pen and ink drawings inside for me, which really mean the world to me because my aunt and uncle are now gone, and the store is very different than what it once was. Jim was a brilliant artist, and it was a real pleasure to work with him. Once Tommy the Tugboat came out, Jim and I had 2 what I consider really extraordinary things happen to us. One, we were invited to the Baxter School for the Deaf, and the book was signed while I read it, and then Jim and I did a workshop with the kids, and he taught them how to draw tugboats. That's an experience I'll never forget. And the other is visiting the Barbara Bush Children's Hospital and working with the kids there. It was always exciting working with Jim, and he was a dear friend, and I cherish the relationship that my family formed with him and Gloria, and they just mean the world to us.
Jim came to us actually via his wife, Gloria, who started at the library and started volunteering. And he would come in evenings and say hello. Knowing that he was an artist, a commercial artist, I showed him my vision one day of having a painting on the wall. And we had just done the play, Charlotte's Web. So the idea came to us that maybe we could have a barn, that he could paint a barn on the wall for us. And he looked at the wall and he said, oh my goodness, yes, I'd be glad to. So he left, and 2 days later he came in with this wonderful drawing of what he envisioned it to be. And his idea was that we would go to the dump together, because we were both dump pickers, and we would get the material at the dump. And he proceeded to build this wonderful, wonderful gift. And that was just the kind of person that Jim was, that if you asked him, he always said yes. If you shared your idea, he would go forth with it.
Well, my connection with Jim was initially from trying to secure some Artists of the Month. And I had asked him, and I found it was very valuable to ask him for his ideas on who would be suitable to do this. And I think he was typically thinking of the new up-and-coming artists who needed a chance. Another memory was that we've always had the Halloween parade, and for the last few years, or I can't remember, it's been every year, but we have asked Jim to be a judge. And so Jim doesn't just come. He comes incognito. And I remember the first year I didn't know who he was.
It was so hard for him to choose amongst all of the children, because they all, of course, do bring their own special delight to their costumes. But Jim always labored over it and went into how much work went into the costume, and different personality of the kid in the suit, and he just, I don't know, he just had the biggest heart in the whole world. He really did.
Jim designed the logo for the library here, and we wanted to indicate somehow that we were a library that was local to Boothbay Harbor, but yet it was open to the world through the books, through interlibrary loan. And so Jim came up with this idea that the library, we could have this framework of the library and the logo with the world connected to it. Another connection that we had with Jim was chalk art on the tar on House Hill. The first year, I have some ideas of things that the kids could draw on the tar, so I still have it, and we use it every year for kids to have an idea of what some ideas that they can do while they're down there with the chalk. Every year he would bring his own camera. I would bring my camera, he would bring his camera. And he would encourage the kids, especially, stop, draw something. And then they'd get down and they'd draw these pictures on the tar, and he'd get his camera out and take their picture. As who knows, maybe this is the next Picasso coming up or whatever. But I just loved how he believed in the young, and he believed in the young artists, the people who were trying to make a go of it.
Why Arts Week is an annual event, and the slogan, where community and culture meet, is a perfect call for a project bringing together our YMCA and the Boothbay Region Art Foundation. The walls surrounding the indoor track at the Y are decorated with various pieces of big art. Several years ago, teams of teens from the Y, sponsored and guided by the Boothbay Region Art Foundation, created 4 4-by-8-foot murals.
I think it's wonderful for the Art Foundation to join with the Y in creating those lovely murals that we see every time we walk.
Andy Hamlet, executive director of the YMCA, approached the Art Foundation to help make that collaboration happen again. The BRAF Board of Trustees was enthusiastic about the creative opportunity, and Jim Taliana, president of the foundation, volunteered to coordinate the project.
What we were asked by Andy Hatlett, the director at the Y, is for our organization to get more murals put up on the track in the field house. And we went to the youth center and a teen center and asked them to come up with designs. We said it could be anything, as long as it's tied in with the Y. All the different activities, all the different locations they have, and to come up with designs that focused and would be inspiring to see, all about the Y.
Well, I met Jim through the Wise Annual Fund campaign, and every year we pick a theme, and part of community awareness is getting it out in front of people, and so we'd come up with a theme. It might be
have a heart.
A smile says it all.
A smile says it all. Mission Impossible.
Yeah, and so the neat thing about Jim is that you would just tell him what the theme was, and then he would take a canvas, and in the Wise way, that's a 4x8 sheet of plywood, and he would come back with a small sketch and get very excited about it and say, well, this is how I think it would work, and it might be almost like a Cheshire grin for a smile says it all, and having that move up a thermometer, but the thermometers were always creative. And sometimes they had moving parts to them. Really wasn't until later that I realized that he was in advertising, and it all kind of makes sense, and how easy he was able to convey, what our goals were, but always personalize that.
Andy really worked on the annual fund thermometers, but when we were having our capital campaign drive to build this great aquatics facility, we needed a thermometer at the tail end for the community phase. And I had this vision of a pool and a swimmer, and the swimmer somehow moving. And that's all I conveyed to Jim. And he came back with exactly, I don't know how he did it, but exactly what I had up in my mind, but I couldn't artistically display the way that he could.
Right. Waves were the background, so waves like of the pool, and then the swimmer was reaching further, which is, you never really thought about this, but it was a big stretch goal, but really stretching for the wall.
The swimmer moved.
Move along, but he always wanted to be the one that moved that.
And then last summer, we held a charitable event. It's the first time that's been done here in this region, and we asked 50 artists to paint chairs. And they were Adirondack chairs, that was the canvas, and Doris Welch, who's been working here for years at the Y, had a relationship with Jim and picked up the phone and asked. She sat on the committee for the charitable event, and he said, of course. And Andy has just recently learned a little bit of history about the chair that he painted and why he chose to paint that. Gloria shared with him at the greenhouse.
Yeah, she mentioned that he was working between two different bodies of work. One was going to be Mona Lisa, and the other being Venus de Milo, which is the one that Gloria said he really ought to end up doing. It was a beautiful chair. She was draped in the chair, long flowy hair, and I believe another artist actually ended up
the Vanders purchased that for their daughter, Jessie. It was her favorite chair out of all, and so they purchased it as a birthday gift for her. Yeah.
I'm Catherine Wygant Faucett. I'm the Executive Director of the Boothbay Harbor Region Chamber of Commerce. And I got to know Jim because he got involved with our Arts 27 group, which is a subgroup of the Chamber that ties in with the arts and culture. And he came in one day and was in our conference room here and introduced himself and was talking about all the arts and culture and things that he's been tied in with various groups. And he had told me that he had worked with Convention and Visitors Bureaus in Detroit. And so I said, well, it'd be really great if you got involved with us in our marketing committee. And so he thought that would be a good idea, and he came in and we were working on our region guide. And he had an idea for the cover and putting art, because we're an artist community here. And I said, that sounds great. So we started working together and we did that. And then he worked on our region map and he sketched it out and said, oh, I think it needs to go this way or that way. And so we worked on that. And he was such a big help and he had such a great vision and had his background with the arts and also with convention and visitors bureaus that we asked him to come on the board. And he would come in and he'd have these ideas and he's like, well, let me do this. And I'd be like, yeah, let's do it. This would be great. And so the next great idea that he worked on with us was our Windjammer Days. And then he also worked with our Clawdown. And Cherie Scott, who's our events and service manager, will tell you about her interaction with him on that.
Jim and I sort of met when I was hired here at the Chamber to be the project manager for our signature 50th Windjammer Days Festival. And Jim came up to me, introduced himself with his charming smile and said, hi, I'm Jim, and I just want you to know that I've got the Artist Alley completely covered. And he showed me this, and he said, this is a sketch that I put together, and this is my vision for the Artist Alley, and of course this has never been done before, so we're pulling out all the stops for the 50th, you know. And he said, can you make this happen? Can you put this banner and make it happen? And I said, sure, because you just don't say no to Jim, you know. So we worked a lot on this in the next couple of months. And, you know, I do remember that probably 10 days before Windjammer Days, Jim came up to me and said, you know, well, I'll see you in about a week. And I said, okay. I said, where are you off to? And he said, Ireland. And I said, really? He said, yeah. I said, wow, is this like a quick trip? He said, oh no, I'm going with my son and my grandson. This is a 3-generational trip, and I've been planning this for a while, and I really want to go. And I said, wow, this is great, Jim. And of course, inside I was panicking because, you know, Jim owned this piece, and it was a new piece, and I didn't really interfere much with Jim because I knew that once he owned something, he lived and breathed it. So I was worried about it, and he said, don't worry, my wife Gloria's got all the stuff if you need anything, and it's all going to be fine. But, you know, the wonderful thing about Jim was when he walked away, I said, wow, good for Jim, you know, that family always comes first, you know, his love for his family and the memories and the time that he put into his family, above all the work that he did in this community, family came first. And that's how I like to remember Jim today. So flash forward, we're past Windjammer Days, and Jim's back from Ireland, and everything went really well. We had about 6 to 8 weeks to put together our first annual Chef's Lobster Bite competition. It was sort of a quick visionary thing we put together, and then it became real very quickly because I happened to call Jim and said, Jim, we just got out of this meeting, and this is a new event, and we really feel like we need to brand it. We want your stamp on it. We saw what you did with the guide. We saw what you did with Artist Alley, and you're just this visionary. So he said, you know, I'm pretty swamped right now. I got a lot of things going on, Cherie. And I said, I know, I'm so sorry, but can you have this for me tomorrow? The wonderful thing about Jim was, as much as he was so stretched with all his commitments, when I came back to my inbox at 9 a.m. the next morning, he had sent it to me at 1 o'clock in the morning. So he did an overnighter on that, and I felt bad, but in hindsight, you know, I'm so glad he stayed up till 1 in the morning because, you know, we're gonna have this piece of Jim forever. And it will always be on the hats, on the wine glasses, on the banners, but more so in our hearts and in our memories. So thank you, Jim. This was awesome.
Jim's art tells many tales. At Our Lady Queen of Peace Catholic Church, Jim and Gloria could be called the gifts that keep on giving. Jim joined harbor legend Tony Squilanti's vision for enhancing the church's Knights of Columbus front porch nativity by painting special backdrops. Tom Fogerty shared this behind-the-scenes story.
Had a little problem though. Someone came along, one of the parishioners, and said, panels are wrong. And he didn't know why. He said, what did I do wrong? He said, you have sheep. There were no sheep. They were Nubian goats. So he had to change the sheep to Nubian goats, which he did. But he got a little bit miffed at it. So he added a chicken Put a Rhode Island red rooster in there, and it, just for humor. The next job that came along for a painter was Father Irving's idea of making a case to hold the Santons. Jim did a lot of research now. This was a different ball game. He studied about the terrain and the houses, what did the buildings look like, and what the plant life. So he did quite a bit of studying on his own, and then commenced to paint the scene, and it came out very well. One of the figures was an artist. At the funeral for Jim Taliana, the figure of the artist was carried by one of the altar boys, altar servers. He was always easy to work with. He would make changes just for the good of everyone else.
And I met them at church, and then I realized that Jim was an artist. And so then I was thinking, I'd asked several people if they would make a new banner for our Christmas decorations at the church, something liturgical, you know. So he said, well, how about you help me make the banner? You tell me what you want, and together we put it together. He cut out most of what was going on the banner, but he came here in my dining room, on my dining room table. We created this beautiful banner for Christmas. And I was so happy with him. And I just didn't realize that he would do it. He was such a important, it didn't seem like an important thing for him to do, but I realized that it was. He was very much taken up with it, and we were both happy with the result. So, and then we went on to make an Easter banner. And well, that is my memory of Jim, and I really loved him.
What he created really represented almost all facets of this Boothbay community.
It certainly didn't sit idle when he retired to Boothbay. I think he just was following his passion and having a little more control over what he wanted to do, which was always giving back.
He's such a special person, never leaves the heart of those that he touched, because he touched so many, you know. Some of us are lucky to touch a few, and he just, I think, pretty much captured the whole town.
And on behalf of the Board of Selectmen and the management, the municipal management, I would like to thank Jim Taliana, who was a wonderful person, who came and helped this town over 10 or 11 years, quite freely.
We really miss him. He's a great, great asset. He was a great asset, and he was so much fun, and a very gentle, kind man who was a big light in our world, and we miss him.
We love you.
As the Boothbay Region Art Foundation leads the movement to honor Jim with a stone bench in Whale Park, the Maine Photography Show dedicates its 2013 edition to Jim's tireless efforts to recognize Maine's very special photography talent.
The Best of Show Award has been named in perpetuity the Jim Taliana Best of Show Award, and is sponsored this year, as it has been from the very first show, by the First Bank. The 100-plus entries selected for the show by this year's juror, Tony Sweet, are hung at the Boothbay Region Art Foundation at 1 Townsend Avenue in the heart of Boothbay Harbor, now through May 3rd. Stop by and honor Jim's vision, and as he always said,
thank you so much. Enjoy the show.